What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the SmeshCast Podcast, Episode 6. We have the whole crew right back together. We've got myself, Rowie. We've got Noah. We've got Adam. The whole crew's back together. Let's hit that intro.
Hell of a card last night. I had a great time.
Yeah, so we had a hell of a card last night. We had Overeem against Sakai. That was quite a main event, actually. It lasted the full 5 rounds. Didn't last the end of the 5 rounds, so it wasn't actually.
Oh no!
It was actually a rare 5th round finish, with Overeem getting that TKO just about a minute into that 5th round. What do you guys think about that fight?
I thought that it was a very interesting fight. They both seemed like they started off a little more cautiously. You know, they're both aware of the power coming in, but in those first few rounds, those first 3 rounds, it absolutely looked like Sakai's blitzes, his boxing was going to get the better of Overeem. I mean, we all expect at this point that Overeem's chin is damaged, and watching him turtle up defensively, it's hard to watch while he takes those strikes. And as the rounds went on, more and more of them were sneaking through. And based on what he said in his post-fight interview, I'm inclined to believe that this is true. But I think that Overeem's experience truly showed in this fight.
Oh, for sure.
I think that he knew that he could drag him into deep waters, into those championship rounds where Overeem is all too comfortable, and Sakai wouldn't really have the energy. And then, once he realized that he could take him down at will and punish him with that brutal ground and pound, I mean, it was all over for Sakai. And it seemed like Overeem knew he wanted to come in patient and cautious. He was confident that he could handle the punishment, which is very interesting because, as we all know, the narrative on Overeem is that he can't handle that punishment anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think that this showed, a real cerebral side to Overeem.
Yeah.
I think it showed a side to him that people know is there, but you don't know it until you see it. And I think
you don't see it in every fight from him.
Because he can, he's got the power. But man, can't underestimate the Reem. He has a championship level fight IQ. I think that was made clear with this fight.
Yeah. Adam, what do you think?
I mean, it was crazy because Sakai, throughout the first few rounds, like you were saying before with the blitzes, he just had like a few seconds. It wasn't a lot of just quick combinations where Overeem was covering up, and it was like, okay, it's possible the fight might be stopped or leading in that direction, just the way that Sakai was teeing off. And it seemed like that was the game plan, that Overeem was trying to drain him out a little bit, take on some damage, which, I mean, obviously isn't ideal, but really drag him into those championship rounds. And at about the end of round 3, I was like, I don't know if Overeem necessarily wants to be there, or if that's just his game plan, that he's trying to drag it out. And lo and behold, that's what the plan was: take a little bit more damage, and then just totally come in, dominate, get the ground and pound, and get like such a nice finish.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, the story of this fight was, I mean, coming in at least, was the Curitiba versus the kind of that Dutch kickboxing, but really the Thai clinch was what I was interested in, right? The Curitiba Thai clinch against the Dutch Thai clinch. And what we actually found out was that it turns out the Curitiba won out most of the time, whether that was because of just Overeem maybe being over the hill, as you guys were saying, maybe not having the chin, and maybe not wanting to rely on that chin anymore because, as you guys said, he doesn't have it anymore like he used to. So he did take a couple big shots, and that wasn't impressive. But he wasn't, as you guys said, he wasn't trying to go and fight back and really walk into those big shots. He was very happy shelling up, letting Sakai unload on him, shelling up for a couple shots, getting out of the way. What really, really changed the fight, and for that reason, I gave Sakai the first round. That second round, I wasn't really sure. I kind of leaned Overeem. And that third round was more Overeem. But it seemed like as the fight was progressing, it was going more and more in Overeem's favor. The first couple rounds, it felt like Sakai was a bit stronger. But what I think really changed everything is in that third round where he finally got that takedown towards the end of the round. It was a bit of a weird one, right? It wasn't your typical double leg. It was kind of like a half a double leg and then just drag him down with you. but
was that his rolling? Was that the rolling takedown that he did, or was that
he did
later?
that every time. He kept on doing that.
That was very fun to watch. I'll tell you that.
And so
Cormier was up in arms about it.
Well, he was up in arms because it wasn't a classic takedown. But what that did is it just showed, okay, wait a minute. I'm losing in these tie clinch battles, but I don't need to go and fight in those tie clinch battles. Overeem used his experience, as you guys said. He knew what he was doing. He knew what he wanted. He knew how to kind of move past what he wasn't necessarily being successful at and finding a way to win. That's that veteran atmosphere. And honestly, he's done that in a few fights recently. The Rosenstrike fight, he did the exact same thing and managed to hold on. Almost managed to do it for 5 full rounds until the last 15, 20 seconds. He
arguably could have won that fight too.
Yeah, he's now a guy.
Maybe arguably should have won that fight.
I don't think he's a better striker than most guys. He's a better striker than most guys, but he's not the best striker in the heavyweight division. He's probably a better grappler than most guys, but he's by far not the greatest grappler in the heavyweight division. But he knows how to mix them together, and he knows when to use one. His fight IQ is what's getting him through these fights, and what's keeping him alive in this heavyweight division. He was ranked number 6 coming into this. He might be ranked in the top 5 come next week or come Tuesday or Wednesday when they update the rankings. So this for Overeem was about his next step forward in his last real title run. So the question here, I guess, is twofold. One, do you guys think he can make that title run? And 2, what do you think he needs to do in order to win, in order to earn that title shot? How many more wins, and against who would those wins be?
I think something that is kind of important to sort of incorporate into this is that you can never really judge a fight off of the fighter's like physical appearance after, because they may be brutally damaged and cut, but they may have dominated the entire fight. But at the end of the fight, like Overeem just looked fresh. Like he just looks like he could have gone like a few more rounds, no problem.
He did. He limped over when he was getting a photo taken with his team. I did notice he was walking a little strangely, but he sounded fine. He looked fine.
Yeah, and
like happy.
In comparison, but in comparison to Sakai, who it probably doesn't have the ideal fighter's body, but you can't judge considering how Daniel Cormier made his career with the dad bod. But you could tell that Sakai had taken, or Derek Lewis, but you could tell that Sakai had taken like way more damage and was cut up.
Yeah. So so who do you think he should fight next, and how far is he from the title shot then?
Keep in mind, was it Derek? I think a Derek Lewis fight would be good, but Derek Lewis is tied up, obviously, with Curtis Blades. No.
Yeah, I believe so.
After that fight, they're both going to need a bit of a break. So I want to see him run it back with Rosenstrike. I think he'd win that fight again. I think he would win that fight, as I feel he deserves to win that fight.
Yeah, I agree with you to Jairzinho, and I can see maybe if they want to put JDS in there, but JDS just lost to Jairzinho, right? So I'd rather Jairzinho, or I guess
I wouldn't put JDS in there. JDS needs more of a tune-up. I think.
Could do the loser of the Blades versus Derek Lewis fight, just because the winner is probably getting a title shot, so the loser would be maybe, but they don't usually do winners and losers. It's kind of a weird spot for Overeem to be in right now.
Yeah, they may get the next title shot, but that's contingent on probably like quite a long period of time, considering Jones will probably hop in after Ngannou gets a shot.
That's true, actually. So maybe you could do the winner of
the wrench.
You could do the winner of Blades against Derek Lewis, and then the winner of that fight of Overeem versus one of those two would get a title shot against the winner of Jones versus the winner of Ngannou versus Stipe too. We've got a lot of moving parts going on here. Maybe it's too much to guess too far ahead.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Of course.
How do you think, relative to the other heavyweight contenders, what kind of a chance do you think Overeem has against Stipe?
Stipe, I don't see him beating. I just don't. Unless Stipe gets knocked out so brutally by Ngannou that he just doesn't have a chin anymore.
Could happen.
Actually, one more fight that I hear is coming up. I think it's Alexander Volkov against, I believe, Walt Harris. That's a really interesting fight. So if that winner actually could be a really good, I think it would be an interesting little like semifinal where it's like the winner of Walt and Volkov is like the is we got against Overeem, and then we got Blades and Lewis. So that's like a semifinal. The finalists face off, and then the winner gets the title shot.
Do you want to
The only thing
potentially
is
see
if
that
Harris
rematch
wins.
so fast? Yeah,
Yeah, the Harris. It's true.
that's a quick turnaround on a rematch. But we'll see. We know, Reem said he wants to take a bit of a break, so it'll be a little bit. He's an old fella. I think he deserves to take a little time. But I would like to see Derek Lewis and Overeem. That's a fight that I'm interested in myself, regardless of any current matchmaking. That is what I'm most interested in seeing.
Adam,
no, it's a good fight.
Adam, were you going to say what were you going to say about?
I was going to say to answer your question before about matching him up with Stipe. Yeah, I'm still not sure. I'm not so convinced by his like past performances that he could, win the title. But I do enjoy like his advertising on Twitter where he's like one final run, one last ride to the title.
I'm rooting for him, man.
Yeah, I mean, listen, sure. He might not have the title, but by all means, Overeem is like one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. If not, I mean, he's arguably the best just based on his longevity in the division. The damage he's taken, the fights he's won, his record, the fact that pretty much all of his fights end in a finish.
I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. I wouldn't go so far as saying he's by any means in the top.
He's not the best of all time, but he is among the best of all time.
He's an all-timer
without question.
Yeah. You can't go through the UFC heavyweight division. So you can't go through heavyweight and MMA without coming up with a name Overeem at least 10 times. It's just part of the story. Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on. I think
he's a legend. He's a living legend. Possibly one of the greatest in the UFC right now.
Yeah, I think we've beaten this one this one a bit dead. Let's move on to that co-main event. We had Alonzo Menifield taking on OSP. Alonzo Menifield has just one loss coming into this fight. He was, I believe, 9-1. Big, scary guy, about as explosive as you can get in that division, which is saying something for 205. Because that's one of the more explosive divisions out there, along with 185. And he got caught. He was not winning that fight against OSP. OSP was dominating the distance. He couldn't quite manage to get in on OSP. And at one point, he had to make a decision. Does he want to stay on the outside, or as Rogan says, does he want to march right into that fire and risk getting knocked out? And what happened? OSP caught him with that Stipe-like counter left hook as he was rushing in and dropped him out cold face first on the canvas. Brutal.
And it was interesting. That knockout seemed to happen like just about as soon as Menifield started really building up his confidence. I mean, he was cutting some good angles with the strikes. He had, great power shots. But ultimately, OSP was just as usual, he's very confident in this slow, brooding fight style where he waits and he finds his moment. He doesn't throw big combos. Arguably, maybe he should. But in this situation and, many other fights in the past, this is how it ends. He's got that power. And I really like to see that respectful KO. He knew it was over. He knew it was done. Enough said. Didn't need to throw any more strikes. I always respect when I see that in a fighter. But picture perfect knockout. I thought it was a little bit of a dull fight. I'm usually not super excited during OSP fights, but that knockout really cemented it. That was a real fun way to end an otherwise slow start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's built like a little bit of a name for himself over, whether it's the 3 or 4 Von Flue chokes he has in the UFC, or he's had some pretty good knockouts.
Corey Anderson.
But at the same time, he is.
They played that 6 times, I swear, in like 3 minutes on the broadcast. Yeah. It was so frustrating.
But at the same time, like he's a fighter that like wins 2, loses 2. Like he's very back and forth. So is he going to be a very strong competitor in 205? Probably not. He'll probably go on to have a few more great fights just like this. But it was an incredible performance, and him using his low kick to keep the distance was it was fantastic. And Menifield just was struggling closing the distance, and to your point, Rowie, what you were saying before is that's when he decided to he's got to go into that fire to try and score a knockout. But obviously OSP was more victorious.
Yeah, I think it was just one of those things. I think OSP's got one of those very distinct fight styles like Adesanya or like John Jones, where he's very long, he's very lanky, and he knows how to use that distance. And that's really what he does. That's what he weaponizes. He just doesn't do so nearly to the level that Jones and Adesanya do. But what he does have that the other guys might not is he does have some scary power, which is what makes it a bit different. I think that's why, Noah, you don't like watching those OSP fights too much, because he does what John Jones and Adesanya do, but he does it with less volume. And so they really stop the other guy from coming in. They really keep him at a distance, at their distance, and they use those kicks, whatever. But it never really gets. He doesn't have the same volume as them. He more has the power, and sometimes
it doesn't
he catches.
get super gritty.
Well, it's not. Yeah, well, neither does I think Jones or Adesanya necessarily. The majority of times, if they don't have to,
Adesanya can get gritty.
He can if but he doesn't want to. But my point is more so that that Adesanya uses a lot more volume than OSP does. OSP is a lot slower and a lot harder with his shots, but not as high on the volume. And so you just see fewer shots and fewer strikes. But he does occasionally get those crazy knockouts, like Corey Anderson, like over Alonzo Menifield, like we just saw. But it just otherwise, if he doesn't, it ends up being a bit of a slower fight. But I mean, we never really know.
If it works, it works.
Yeah, I think he's kind of a mainstay in that top 15. He's not going to necessarily ever crack the top 5 anymore. I think he's a classic kind of gatekeeper kind of role. Tough night out for anybody that crosses him.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
The featured bout of the night, though. The featured bout of the night.
Oh, yes. Boy.
That was a fun fight. So actually, let me just put a bit of context to this. In the build-up to this fight, they actually had during the formal weigh-ins, when they had those handshakes or the face-offs in front of Dana White, Zelim Imadaev slapped Michel Pereira. And he slapped him in the weigh-ins, and of course Michel says, no, I'm going to get you back for that. And oh boy, did he! Not only did Pereira just take over that fight, he was faster than Imadaev at every point. He was smoother. When he did punch, he had really, really straight punches. He was off with the timing. He changed the angles, used great footwork, but he also used a couple of Stockton slaps, threw them in there as a little tribute to Nate Diaz, just to get him back for those slaps in that face-off.
Those sounded as hard as any punch.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And he was showing the slap before he hit him with it. Man, that was a fun fight. What do you guys think about that one? Adam, let's start with you on this one.
Yeah.
So I didn't catch the entire fight. I just caught the end of it. But I mean, like, it was great. Him blowing the kiss and then giving the slap was like, it was brilliant. It was fun to see. I mean, in his which fight was it that he was doing the backflips and
the first 2 or 3 really, but Tristan Connolly, I think his name is.
I want to say it was
Canadian
his first
guy.
fight. Yeah.
Where he lost.
Yeah, where he lost. I was gonna say that, like, that fight, I was like, like maybe the showboating, you're not using it in the best fashion, and it's gonna like result in just you accumulating losses. But he had a great time in the octagon, it seemed like, and I mean the finish was great too. So.
Yeah. I mean, God, what a fun fight. I mean, in a word, and I hate to say this, but it's true. Imadaev was humiliated. He was humiliated throughout that entire fight. And listen, I don't think less of him, but you can tell that he himself felt like he was being humiliated, because that's what Paeta was trying to do. He stunted on him. He put on a hell of a show. It was like a Harlem Globetrotter game. He was dancing. He wasn't looking at him. He was staring down at the floor, looking at his feet while he danced, and just perfectly dodging his strikes, throwing back his own. And when he did do that conventional boxing, we saw remarkable skill. If he turns off the showboating, I think he's still a remarkable fighter. Now, I think that the showboating is important for him. I think, like Tony Ferguson, it gets him in the zone, and to an extent, he's always going to do it a little bit. Maybe if he hits that Justin Gaethje mentality of, I'm not here to have fun, I'm here to dominate and be the champion, we're going to see less of it, but we're always going to see some, because I don't think that he can fight effectively without having that fun himself.
Yeah.
And God, it paid off here so well. The dancing, the Showtime kicks, the Showtime punches, like, God, and that man can jump high.
Yeah.
My
So let me
goodness.
go off that actually, because I agree, but I disagree. I mean, I agree that it will always be there. He's always going to have that showman in him. But what I did actually find is when he did go to the showmanship a bit more, he actually was a bit less successful overall. I think maybe the threat of the showmanship helped him a bit. But really, when he was successful, in my opinion, was when he was going with those fundamental boxing styles, when he was going for that 1-2 that was just so fast. The speed he had, the explosiveness for that division, and the size he has for that division were just, and Zellum couldn't do anything about it. But it was just something about whenever he started doing the running stuff, Zellum would just back away. And an even more, I guess, experienced striker than Zellum Imadaev is not going to go and let you get away with that, right? He's gonna let you waste your energy, and he's going to go and do what Tristan Connolly did, and he's going to go and march you down and finish you off, or at least win the fight by decision. So I think that he has to go and find a way to balance it. And the one thing I was a little bit unhappy with was his corner. So if you actually listened in on his corner, their only real advice to him was showboat more. And I was like, what are you talking about? That's not when he was successful. And in the past, that's not been when he's successful. Yes, he had that Danny Green fight, that one, but he kind of got a little, I'm not going to say lucky there, but he had a lot of stuff that didn't hit, and he hit that one big shot. I don't want to see the same thing happening as happened in the past, where he just showboats too much. He becomes more of, as you say, a guy who's looking to have fun rather than a guy who's looking to win. He has to have fun, but he has to also be looking for the finish. He can't go all showmanship.
However, to play devil's advocate, had he gone in and boxed technically and functionally and hadn't showboated, I think he would have gotten the finish, but I don't think I would have been nearly as entertained.
But how
I was just gonna say.
Yeah, but how much can you actually, like, how sustainable is that?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think he showed good progress mixing it up, and I'd like to, if he improves from here, then he's he's already someone who's very scary in the welterweight division, but I think right now, looking at him, I don't think many, like a Kamaru Usman is not scared of him.
Oh my God, no, he had no chance over Kamaru. Kamaru would eat him.
Absolutely not. Most people, I feel like a Stephen Thompson wouldn't be very scared.
That's a fun fight, actually.
That would be a very fun fight.
That's a great.
But I don't think Stephen Thompson would be scared of him.
I don't think Stephen Thompson would. No, okay. So I wouldn't use the word scared, by the way, because no one's scared.
He wouldn't be intimidated. He wouldn't be particularly worried. He would have had much more worrisome fights in the past.
Definitely.
But if Paeta continues to improve, continues to mix up the showboating with the technical striking, I mean, who knows how high he can fly. This was
good entertainment.
A remarkable fight last night. It was. I remember we were speaking, and for a moment I was like, "Is this the best fight of the year?" And Roe, you told me it's not competitive enough to really say that. And you know what? I agreed with you immediately. But most entertaining fight of the year? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
For me, at least, maybe.
What were you saying, Adam?
No, I was just saying that's a good point. That it was very entertaining, which is not something you get. I mean, not to say that the fights aren't entertaining, but to have that other aspect of being like, oh wow, you're doing something that's not fighting in the octagon. This is kind of interesting.
I just don't want to see him to fall into the Mike Perry mode, where he becomes a guy who everyone loves to watch, but no one expects to, and expects to win about half the time. And isn't really going to be a major competitor, but has potential, because Mike Perry has, I think, just like Pereira, has a real chance to be a good fighter. I don't know what his limit is, where his ceiling is, but he's not finding it out the way he's fighting right now. And I think Pereira
needs to marry his girlfriend, and then once he has his wife in his corner, maybe even get a couple of kids in his corner. Who knows how high he can fly?
That's true. Did you guys see actually what were your thoughts on the finish for that fight? That was a bit weird. To me, I'm going to be honest, it actually didn't look like Imadaev tapped. In my opinion, It doesn't end up really mattering. Obviously, Pereira was going to win.
He was going to lose, sure, but having a finish on your record versus a decision loss on your record.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a tap, if I'm being honest.
No, I absolutely agree. I think unanimous.
Adam?
It's similar to who was it? Kevin Lee and Chiesa. When like the choke was locked in. Wait, I think he had a rear naked on Michael Chiesa, and then the choke was locked in, and the fight was stopped before Chiesa tapped.
But he would have tapped, kind of thing.
But he would have tapped anyways. Like the choke was so deep that like.
Yeah, I think he could have fought the hands. You never really know, especially with rear naked. You see guys.
Yeah,
fight the
you never
hands.
know.
He wasn't trapped against the cage. He was kind of. There was movement. He didn't have the hooks in, by the way. I would not say Pereira was in the position where you could say it was over. Like that was.
No.
But anyway, Pereira, good win. I'm not taking anything away from either fighter. Fantastic win by Pereira.
Not like the worst stoppage. Like it clearly, he didn't tap, but when you're in there in the moment, it looked like his hands were kind of rustling around. Whatever.
Yeah,
I'll give it. He was going to lose anyways. How about his call out of Masvidal at the end? He wants that BMF belt.
Exactly. After the fight, he called out Jorge Masvidal, and I don't think that makes any sense.
I don't know if he called out Jorge as much as he called out the BMF belt.
He also called out Jorge, but regardless, like, yes, you're a fun fighter, but dude, you've been around for you're 2-1 in the UFC right now, I think, maybe 2-2. Like, you haven't fought anybody. You just go and like to dance while you do things. It doesn't make you the baddest motherfucker around. I'm sorry, dude. What are you doing?
Here's the thing, though. As soon as he says BMF belt and he starts building up fans, that's a powerful thing. I think that's a powerful thing.
He's like the seventh guy to mention it.
I think that Dana, when he looks at the BMF belt, I think he looks at it as a pure popularity contest.
No, he looks at it as a journeyman's belt for guys that he's not going to give it to young up-and-comer. He's not going to give a Sean O'Malley, no matter how bad of a motherfucker he is, the BMF belt, because he's just going to market him as the normal champion, become the next Conor, whatever it might be. He's only doing BMF stuff for a Cowboy Cerrone, for a Masvidal, for a Nate Diaz. Why Michelle Pereira makes no sense for a BMF belt in any
all I'm saying is I don't think necessarily that when Dana looks at the BMF belt, he's thinking, I need someone similarly ranked to Masvidal. I think it's a popularity contest for that belt. I think it really doesn't matter beyond bragging rights.
With that.
And I think that Dana doesn't care if it ends up being like a one-sided bout because, well, what did you expect? That guy's the baddest motherfucker on the planet. I think it's a popularity contest.
I would agree with that, saying that it's a popularity contest. But at the same time, I think Pereira is just he's just aiming high. You can't blame him for that. He has aspirations and whatnot, but who knows?
But I don't know. I think, but even if with the popularity contest, there's a certain type of personality that you're looking for in a BMF. And that's
I think the showboating though. I think the showboating really helps.
Street gangster, Noah. You're looking for a guy who's gonna fuck you up the second he sees you. You're looking for a bad motherfucker. When you think of Jorge Masvidal on the street, when you think of Nate Diaz on the street, they called each other gangsters. If you want to go, and I think the other person that makes sense for a BMF could be a Mike Perry. That kind of personality. I don't think Mike Perry deserves that title shot or that.
I don't think the UFC wants to market him in that way. Of course
not. But I'm saying that's the personality we're talking about. Michel Pereira, he's a great fighter. He's showboaty, but he's not that kind of a fighter.
Okay. I think we just see it differently, and at the end of the day, we don't know what's going through Dana's mind. I see it as just. I don't think you necessarily have to be a street gangster to have it. That's just my opinion.
I think the big distinction to make between the two of them is that Pereira last night when he fought and he slaps the guy, that was to showboat and to entertain the audience. When Nick or Nate are in the octagon and they slap their opponent, that's not for entertainment or to showboat to the audience. That's for them to let their opponent know that this is their octagon and just like it is on the streets, and I'm taking the fight no matter what.
Exactly, it's a showboating thing. There's a difference between a showman and a bad motherfucker, and
I'm going to continue to play devil's advocate. I think that also it could be a compelling fight if you get someone who's a real tough motherfucking gangster from the street versus someone who's just I'm going to make you look like a fucking joke. I think that's a very fun matchup. I'm
not disagreeing. It's a great fight. I just don't think it makes sense for a BMF. But I guess we can.
I think we need to see more. There hasn't been any real talk about the BMF. Who knows if that fucking thing is ever even coming up to contention again?
Well, actually, there is some discussion on that. We will get to that a little bit later in the episode.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, no. I guess you're right. When you're right, you're right. Fair.
For now,
We'll
let's finish off this card. We did have a few more fights. We had Moniz versus Fabinski. Moniz got that dope little armbar, snuck it in there. Very, very, very quick tap, actually. Because it was in deep really, really quickly, actually. I don't have a ton to say on that fight, really.
No.
Maybe you have some jiu-jitsu to tell us about.
I actually can. I didn't watch that
Didn't
fight.
see it? All right.
That one was just quick. I apologize too. I took notes for all the fights last night, but that one I think was just quick night at the office. I didn't really have a chance.
Well, speaking of quick night at the office, if we want to really talk about quick night at the office, we had Brian Boom Kelleher with under a minute to get that guillotine against Rodriguez. And what do people have to learn? Do not shoot on Brian Boom Kelleher. It's like, why would you shoot on Charles Oliveira? It's just not a good idea. Will choke you out, so will Boom. And I think Boom has, I think this is his fourth guillotine choke in the UFC alone. What I can see, he guillotined O'Day Osborne. He guillotined Yuri Alcantara. I don't know who that is. He also guillotined Julio Arce, but that was back in Ring of Combat. But Julio Arce is also a UFC fighter. This man will guillotine you. Don't shoot in.
Yeah, it's like you've seen that video of Forrest Griffin talking about his loss to Anderson Silva.
No, I haven't.
It's very funny. Forrest, in his very good-humored way, basically describes how Anderson was just like, bro, what are you doing? Why do you think you can even fight me? And then just flawlessly beat him. And I have to imagine that Kelleher had a similar, did you really just do that? Are you really so stupid that you just did that?
There's a difference. Because, I mean, with the Silva fight, the idea was there's nothing you can do to me that's going to go and threaten me even. There's just nothing you can touch me with. With the Kelleher, it's just why would you go into the one thing that you know is going to end the fight right off the bat when you're dry, by the way, right? There's no sweat to get out of it. There's no blood to get out of it. It's just you're just walking into the biggest trap he has.
Yeah, it's just really
shooting
poor decision making.
It's like forcing takedowns against Yoel Romero and expecting not to get kneed into oblivion, right? It's just don't do it.
As a coach, what do you even tell your fighter when they come back? Everything you did was just the worst decision.
Let me turn my back to Damian Maia 1 second.
Yeah. Christ.
Yeah, so I mean, he shot in. Obviously, his head was too low, and I mean, it was easy for Kelleher to just sink in the guillotine.
That was it. Do you have anything to add on to the Araujo De La Rosa fight or the Hunter Smith versus Azure fight?
I do. I enjoyed that fight. So I'll just talk briefly about some of the notes that I took during that. I don't know if anyone else saw it, but I thought during round. Oh, sorry, the Araujo versus De La Rosa.
Okay. All right. Cool.
I thought you said it. I thought I heard you introduce it.
I said two fights, and then and then you're like, oh yeah, that was a great fight. I'm like, which one?
Okay.
All right. Vivian
I
Araujo
didn't hear you.
Montana De La Rosa. What do we got?
So first off, I thought I saw a headbutt in the first round that looked pretty solid. I wrote that down in my notes, but it didn't seem to lead to anything, so kind of inconsequential. Ultimately, though, it was a hell of a brawl between those two women. De La Rosa had excellent power throughout and was really working those haymakers, and Araujo was really doing a consistently good job of working the body. I mean, every time that she hit De La Rosa in the liver, you could hear it. It did not sound very fun. One thing that I really had that was critical of De La Rosa was she was very much a stationary target through the fight. I didn't see I didn't see really any footwork from her, nor head movement, and it made it so that Araujo was able to hit her pretty much at will. She had a phenomenal jab throughout the whole thing, which really caused some serious damage. And ultimately, while they both had power, De La Rosa had more power, I think, in the fight and was really looking to hit a nice knockout haymaker. But Araujo's boxing defense was, she had great head movement the whole time. She was able to avoid taking damage from a lot of the strikes from De La Rosa just through her head movement and her footwork. And, when you're having a boxing match and one person is completely stationary and the other one is moving, I mean, I would guess that by the numbers, the moving target is mostly going to win.
Yeah,
I'm sure. I will say, while I do think Araujo, she swept it all 3 rounds, one thing that I would have liked to see more is I wanted to see her capitalize on those leg kicks more. She was very effective with them. She was causing a lot of damage to De La Rosa with them, but I think she could have peppered them in more, and I think she could have seriously compromised her leg. And I think that would have been a very good story to the fight. I mean, if she had managed to get a finish based off of leg kicks, or even just hurt her enough with the leg kicks so that she could pull off a finish with the boxing, would have been a nice way to capitalize this fight. I think more people would be talking about it. But ultimately, it was just, what more could you want from a brawl? I think De La Rosa unfortunately brought it a little too late in the 3rd round with her defense, but it just wasn't enough. I think she lost all 3 rounds, and I had fun watching that one. That was a classic brawl.
And on that note, we did have one last fight tonight, last night, I guess. We did have Hunter Smith taking on Cole Azure. Maybe I feel like I might have just gotten those names swapped for some reason, but regardless, that was a good fight. Noah, take it away.
Fun.
I think you watched it most closely out of the 3 of us.
I've got a few things to say here. So ultimately, the story of the fight was just some great takedowns and good takedown defense from Azure. He was really able to stay on top of it when he wanted to and stay standing when he wanted to. He also showed some very strong ground and pound, as well as very good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu defense. He was able to just really stay at the advantage when he was on top. I thought at the end of round 2, Smith looked pretty gassed after taking a lot of ground and pound and very tiresome work on the ground against someone who is very sound defensively. But he did go into the 3rd round looking very, very fresh. He knew he was down 2 rounds, and he came in hitting hard. He wanted the win. And
he almost got that rear naked right at the end, too.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been crazy.
That would have been a real turnaround for him. But unfortunately, not much to be said. He couldn't turn it around, and Azure won the decision.
Yeah,
good win for him. Though. Fun. Yeah, nothing too special, but it was fun. Fun little fight.
We did have
There were no...
Yep, sorry, go ahead.
There were no bad fights on this card.
Yeah,
I was very excited the whole time.
It was a short card, only 7 fights. It was supposed to be 9. It was shortened down to 7. Last minute, 2 fights got taken off. 1 heavyweight, 1, I believe it was a middleweight. Lightweight. I'm not fully sure. Thiago Moises fight was taken off. But, I mean, those 7 fights were all made into that main card, and it was a good fight. It was a good night. Not too much to complain about at the end of the day. We still got a night of fights, and we all ended up quite happy, I think. Moving into the news, we did have some big news, some big fights announcements being spoken about at the very least. It is rumored that, or I think it might have been actually announced by Dana, that Kamaru Usman will be defending his welterweight title against Gilbert Burns, as he was supposed to in Fight Island. Was replaced very late last second by Jorge Masvidal. So they are going to make that right and give Burns that title shot against Kamaru, and that'll be in December. So that's a great fight. I'm glad they're putting that together. But the bigger news tied to that is that Masvidal also potentially has his next fight booked. And surprising a lot of people, including myself, it might actually be the rematch against Nate Diaz for the BMF title a second time. That was quite the sound. Wow.
Let's talk about it, I guess. Let's talk about this fucking mess that nobody wants to see, that nobody asked for. Jesus Christ. Why did they even want it? Did they ask for this?
I know why they want it. It's obvious for Nate.
Who's pushing this?
Well, no, for Nate. Nate, he has no big fights coming up. He has another chance to be a main event of a pay-per-view, make a bunch of money. Jorge, same thing, main event of a pay-per-view against probably a pretty, I'm not going to say an easy opponent, but compared to the rest of the welterweight division, he's an easier opponent. one of the more favorable matchups for Jorge, and he makes a lot of money off of it.
Yeah, good way for him to build his confidence up after his last loss. I think that the only really thing you can say, I think, in Nate's favor for this fight is I did get the feeling that, despite pretty viciously losing up until, the cut ended the fight, I did think that cardio-wise, he looked good going into the championship rounds. So maybe if he can make it into 4 and 5, he can pull something out. But, I mean, this isn't like Overeem and Sakai taking damage for 3 rounds and then dragging him into deep waters. I mean, Nate was not defensively sound against Masvidal, period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm on a little bit of the contrary side. I actually really do want to see this fight again, just due to the reason of the way that it ended. If you look back to when he fought Conor the second time, we know Nate Diaz bleeds super easily, so there's always blood rushing down his face. But when Nate is in round, all that scar tissue. And when Nate is in rounds 4 and 5, and there's just blood gushing down, and he's just in that warrior mode, just keeps fighting, keeps on going. I just love that so much, and I think there was a chance that we might have been able to see that in their prior fight if it hadn't gone stopped. But I think this presents an opportunity for maybe some wrongs to be righted. But I'm not opposed to it. I would have liked to see Jorge fight Leon, but I don't know.
Yeah, I actually don't fully agree with you. I don't think that Nate was coming out there like he was in that Conor fight in that 4th and 5th round and going to put it on him. I didn't see anything like that coming out of Nate. Yeah, I agree with you, Noah. He looked good cardio-wise, but he didn't look better than Masvidal cardio-wise. Masvidal, Nate
I disagree with you.
I don't know there.
I
don't know.
I think Masvidal was still leading the show. Maybe he had a little bit less energy, but he's still winning. It's not like
no question.
No, but I mean, yeah, he won the first few rounds, but I'm saying even when he might have been a bit maybe more tired than Nate, even when he was more tired, he was winning the fight. And so, what do you what can change? I don't see anything changing much. Masvidal has been training hard. He's had 5-round fights since then. So he's been working on that cardio. I just see and Nate is getting older and less active. I see no reason that Nate would be able to beat him the second time around. And as you said, Adam, I think that Leon Edwards makes sense. You look at the division, Nate's ranked in the top 10. Okay? I mean, if Masvidal really wants to get another title shot, give him a guy who he's going to earn the title shot against, not a guy who's not even in the top 10. Mm-hmm. I want to see him against one of 2 people. And that was, as you said, Leon Edwards, or I'm okay with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Those 2 guys are guys that are on their way up, about to get a title shot, maybe deserve one, and put up a good fun, exciting, and meaningful. That's the big part, meaningful fight against Masvidal.
I just think
takes me. Oh, go on.
Sorry, I was just gonna say. I think the main thing is that I was very interested in their first fight. I was excited to see it because it was a fun idea and it worked out well, and it got a lot of attention. My only problem with it is that it just didn't get the proper ending. If Jorge was to truly prove that he was the better fighter, which I believe he was that night, then either winning a great decision by destroying him all 5 rounds or finishing him at some point.
But that's my point. What does this prove? You're even there, you're saying, yeah, he looks like he was probably better, but he didn't quite put the stamp on it. But in terms of his position in the welterweight division, this doesn't prove anything.
Because if there was a chance that Nate Diaz came, it would have been very small. But if there's a chance that Nate Diaz came back in rounds 4 and 5 and, I don't know, pulled off some crazy submission, crazy triangle in round 5, everybody would have lost their shit.
But then that's a chance for Nate, not a chance for Jorge.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
it's
it doesn't. I mean, I agree. During that year, Jorge had a great rise, and he had 2 great fights before that. But if Nate were to come back and submit Jorge in the first fight, I mean, I would have thought that would have been fantastic for Nate.
That would be some badass motherfucking shit.
No, but again, I agree with you. Yes, it would have been great. And at that time, I wasn't against the BMF belt. What I'm against is the rematch because, again, I think that Jorge proved he was a better fighter. And what you're doing here is you're giving Nate a chance to come back into the division. Because, yeah, of course, if Nate wins, he just beat the guy who just had a title shot. You can throw Nate right back into the mix there. But it doesn't – a win over Nate Diaz tells me nothing about where Jorge is in the division. Right now, Noah last week went on a big, long rampage about how Jorge is the most overrated guy in the UFC.
That was a bit of a rampage.
And if I'm being honest, I don't know if he's right. I think he has an argument. I don't agree with it, but he has an argument. And I think that we need to see a guy. We just haven't seen him against, except for maybe the Till fight. He hasn't really done anything that has proved to me he's the best guy, or he really has earned where his shot. The Till fight, I can't take anything away from. But the Nate fight just continues that trend of I don't know what this means.
Yeah, true say. That's a good point.
Funny how the Masvidal story changes if he had won that fight with Stephen Thompson.
And that was a close split decision. He has the most split decision losses in the UFC history. He has 4 split decision losses, one against Maia, one against Thompson. Those 2 are hugely influential.
Yeah. That could completely change his story. So he's highly motivated. Masvidal is a scary man, but yeah, ultimately I think I don't really think anyone, well, maybe Adam. Most people aren't asking for this fight, I think. It's funny. It's not often that one of us is on one side of the issue, one of us is on the complete opposite, and then I'm sitting here kind of in the middle.
Well, on a kind of that note, so we do have that title shot booked. We also have now the answer for what Jorge is going to do, which we thought could have been Leon. Well, then what is next for Leon? So Leon Edwards right now is ranked, where is he? I think he's like number 3, number 2. I need to find this.
3? I think it's 3.
4.
Let me find the rankings right here. Just pulling them up. Here they are. He is ranked number 4. So he's number 4. He's behind Colby, Gilbert, and Kamaru. I don't want to see him have to wait for the loser of Kamaru and Gilbert. Colby is going to fight against Tyron in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. So I guess what we could do is maybe we can give him the winner of the Colby fight. Colby against Leon could work if Colby wins. Tyron against Leon was supposed to happen beforehand. If he wins, I guess that he kind of earns that again. So that can work. Other than that, you really got nothing for Leon to do.
Until he gets a title shot.
He didn't fight Stephen Thompson, did he?
Stephen Thompson's ranked 9, though.
Yeah, that's a big drop-off for him.
He's ranked 6 for me for some reason on the UFC website.
Oh, is he? Okay, maybe I'm looking at the wrong outdated rankings or something. That's
Could
possible.
be. I'd take the UFC rankings more officially.
I don't think they fought. That wouldn't be a terrible fight.
Then the Wonderboy fight I'd be down for, but the problem is that the Wonderboy fight still doesn't necessarily earn him a title shot right away. Whereas a fight over Colby would. I think if Colby wins, you have to make the Colby fight because it just everyone else is matched up and it answers a lot of questions. And I think it's also an interesting fight because Leon. Luke Thomas talks a lot about Leon Edwards as an example of what he says is kind of the new age of fighters, which is the guys that are the masters of the half position. So Leon is a good example of this. He doesn't necessarily go and try to take your back all the way. He just puts one hook in and controls you and just gets some damage on, but overall he's just in control. Whenever he's doing stuff, he just does enough to control you and just to win rounds. Colby is not quite that at all, right? Colby rides you out. He goes all hard on the wrestling, and he controls you. Really, both these guys are big on control. So it's really interesting to me to see who actually can control the other guy better. And I don't think Colby's going to go pure striking like he did against Kamaru. That's an interesting fight to me. I like that.
Yeah, that could be good.
In addition, speaking also on that welterweight division, so Khamzat Chimaev, for those who don't remember, this man had 2 wins, one at 185, one at 170, 10 days apart back in that first trip to Fight Island.
Sensational wins. Sensational wins.
Oh, man, he got hit once combined in those fights. It was like 250-1. It was not even close. On the other hand, we don't know what he was going to do since. So Dana White has actually announced in a press conference recently he has obtained a visa for the U.S. He is already, I believe, in the U.S. or he's coming in, I think, on Monday or Tuesday of this week. He'll be in the U.S. and he will be fighting on one of the Vegas cards against Gerald Meerschaert, which is a fantastic fight, right back at 185. And maybe a month later, he's going to travel to Fight Island, assuming he wins and comes out relatively unscathed. He's going to fight Damian Maia on Fight Island. This guy is going to have 4 fights in 4 months, concluding with the number 7 ranked welterweight, one of the most legendary welterweights of all time, really.
One of the most decorated grapplers in the UFC.
Absolutely. And in 4 months' time, this guy can have 4 months away from having a real potential title shot. And that actually, by the way, sorry to take over too much, but just popped into my head. What if you put him, assuming he beats Maia, against Leon?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting fight. I think it kind of proves to your point that it doesn't do much for Leon, because it's still it'd be an uprising star that just got such a big boost, just like Johnny Walker. But that would be a good fight. I don't know how much it accredits Leon to get a title shot off of that, but it's definitely a good fight.
And to see how Maia beats him, for how he faces Maia, though. If he goes and he beats Maia and Meerschaert in the same way he won the first 2 fights, I think that is spectacular enough that I would give Leon a title shot off that win. That's just crazy. You can't.
Could you imagine if he submitted him? If he submitted Maia?
I think he's going to knock him out. Actually, I think it's almost
I would
he's going to knock him out on the feet, because he's a great striker too, and Maia's not.
Yeah, I would agree. But could you imagine if he did? That would be ridiculous.
That would be unbelievable. That would be a real passing of the guard there, so to speak.
Yeah, I really like. I think that this is a really exciting guy. I'm curious if they're pushing him too fast, but there's really no way to know other than these 2 fights. The Meerschaert fight, sure. I think he's going to expose himself and get taken down. I think he's going to try to pull on too many shots, leave his hips open, and get taken down. And I think he's going to get knocked out. Maia's going to get knocked out. I actually think these are relatively favorable matchups for him, and they're going to really catapult him high.
You know who he kind of reminds me of in terms of motivation, not in terms of behavior, is Greg Hardy. Someone who, the UFC brought in, put him up against a couple of relatively, much smaller names, dominates through them, and then they just threw him to the wolves and gave him that huge chance against Volkov. I don't know if the story's going to end the same way, but I mean, they're kind of pushing him in a similar way. Very quick back-to-back fights, and he's looked phenomenal through them, and then, they're going to throw him in there with Damian Maia if he continues to look phenomenal.
I don't know if that's actually the greatest comparison, to be honest, because I think the Greg Hardy was built up a bit more. When you actually look at the caliber of guys that Khamzat actually faced, Rhys McKee, yes, it was his first fight in the UFC, but he was one of the top touted prospects out of the UFC. He was a Cage Warriors champion.
Wow, really?
That's huge. This is a really, really, really top prospect that they thought.
I didn't know that.
They thought they were putting him up against someone big, and this is the guy that got 0 strikes on him. Whereas with Greg Hardy, they gave him cans to begin with, and when he went through the cans, they said, "Okay, I guess we have to go give him harder guys." I agree with the fact that they are moving him up the ladder, but I think that's just how the UFC runs, right? They do that with everybody. They introduce them with a kind of an unknown, unranked guy. They get a couple wins, depending on how emphatically they get those wins. They move him up. If you're going to compare him to someone, I would actually say Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Jairzinho came in, had 2 big knockouts, then faced, I think, Andrei Arlovsky in his 3rd fight, knocked him out, and then went up and faced Ngannou, I think. Or no, maybe it was JDS. I don't even know who it was. I'm forgetting now. But Rozenstruik had 4 fights, and then he was thrown to the wolves, and he really was so emphatic with his wins that 4 fights later, he was fighting Francis Ngannou for basically a title shot. But
I agree with you. That's a fair comparison.
But it is still amazing to see how they're pushing him. It's really, really interesting to see his ascension through the rankings.
I'm excited to continue watching him.
And this is my favorite. This is my favorite part to watch. Right, this is the most exciting thing to watch when the guys are really moving up, and just to see how good are they. We don't know. And
you never know when you're going to get a new best of all time fighter.
And this guy could be, for all we know, this could be
their way through. Khabib their way through in this case.
This guy could be better than
Have you seen people calling him? You see what people have been calling him?
Yeah,
Khabib.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, I think
great.
Connor called him that
You know
too.
what is actually an interesting thing? A lot of because he does, fights extremely similar, is similar style like Khabib. A lot of the criticism people say against Khabib is, unlike a guy like George St. Pierre, he's not going up against the highest ranked wrestlers. Like we haven't seen Khabib take on like top of their game wrestlers like someone like GSP consistently did and made fools of them. Damian Maia is, like I said, arguably the most decorated grappler in the UFC. So seeing someone with, I'm interested in seeing this matchup.
But Damian Maia, even when he's lost, so let's take the striking out of the mix even, because I think Hamzat will just knock him out. But taking that out of the mix, when has Damian lost? To Colby, to Leon, to Kamaru. These are the guys that know how to grind you out and know how to rustle you like Hamzat does. If there's actually anyone that Damian's not great with, it is those big wrestlers. Except I don't know what happened there with curly hair.
Ben Askren.
Ben Askren. Thank you. Ben Askren, obviously that was a bit different. Ben Askren didn't really have as much of the takedown threat. So he didn't have anything to threaten him.
Ben Askren's also has a whole career's worth of damage. His hip was like he only came out after he was done. That like his hip was basically in shreds, and he really couldn't perform as well as he used to at all, by no fault of his own. To be fair.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, on that note, we also had, I guess not really on that note, but Glover Teixeira's fight against Thiago Santos has been moved. It was supposed to be, I believe, next week. No, I think it was supposed to be this weekend, actually. This weekend kind of took a big hit with that fight coming off of it, because I believe Glover has COVID. I think it was Glover. It might have been Santos, but one of them has COVID. As a result, it was moved to an October Fight Night Island fight card. I believe it's going to be on Fight Island now. So that fight was a really, really important fight because it was supposed to really tell us who the next title shot was going to go to in the light heavyweight division after we have that great Dominic Reyes-Jan Blachowicz card or fight. However, the good news is that it is only delayed about a month. So it will really just delay the following title shot about a month. It's kind of a shame to have it off this card. I was excited for that.
It is now a three round fight.
Yeah. So who do you guys think that favors?
I'll be honest. I haven't watched enough of Glover's fights. Actually, I haven't really watched enough of either of their fights. Santos, I know, like I know I've seen him before Jones, but I just don't have the clearest picture in my mind.
Out Jan.
Glover. Right.
Yeah.
Glover is somebody who I'm very. I'm not afraid to say I'm very much unfamiliar with his career. And actually, I missed that Smith fight by some incredible feat. I don't know how I missed that, but I did.
All right. Well,
I think go ahead. I was just gonna say I think it might favor Santos a little bit more because if I remember correctly, like he has quite a few knockouts in his record, and like, if he's trying to push the pace really just to get the job done quickly and know that he doesn't have to build a gas tank for 5 rounds, it maybe will lead a little bit more to his advantage, but you never know.
Yeah, I think it helps Santos in 2 ways. I think first of all, Glover is the veteran. I think giving him more time to kind of figure you out or to kind of find a way to win is always a bad thing. Right. Santos being younger, he's also just more explosive than Glover. Glover doesn't have that same pop he used to. He's still very, very strong. He still has that knockout power, but he doesn't have that pop, right? He doesn't have that sudden movement. And so I think that'll help Santos. The other thing as well is that I think it'll help Santos from a mental standpoint. He hasn't fought since that Jones fight. That was a long fight. He got injured in that fight.
Arguably beat Jones a bit with one knee.
Beat him with one leg. I mean, look, the man, I'm okay giving the guy a 3-rounder to kind of get his bearings, figure shit out again, get it back on his feet, so to speak, but also literally, and hopefully get a good win. And I think he will get a good win. I think he will still beat Glover, and I think he'll get that next title shot against probably Dom Reyes, and especially with Blachowicz. It'll be Dom Reyes it'll be Santos without a question because he already has knocked out Blachowicz. Other news, very small thing to mention, but it is very nice to hear. DC actually officially pulled out of the USADA testing pool, and that means that he needs
He's
at
done.
least 6 months to come back. If he was to come back, there's no way he's going to come back at this point. That is really nice to hear. I'm really happy. Congratulations, DC, on a fantastic career. And
DC said,
go ahead.
He said that he's been tested by USADA for like
Since he was 20.
over 20, about over 20 years, more than 20 years almost. So, God, I bet that's got to feel like wearing a real tight belt for 20 years and then finally taking that sucker off and throwing your jeans off.
And pumping in some TRT.
Yeah.
No kidding. Oh, my God. He's either going to get really, really fat or he's going to be so much more fucking Brock Lesnar jacked than we've ever seen him before.
Or both.
Or both.
I want to see both. I want to see DC with a gut the size of Derek Lewis and arms like Ngannou. That's what I want to see.
DC will become the widest, most dense man to have ever lived.
We also did have Fight Island cards were finally announced. It is official. It appears that Israel Adesanya will be defending his title on Fight Island, which is really big because it means we have a big cage. It also means Dom Reyes' Jan Blachowicz fight will be in a full-size cage. I just think it's good news all around. I like the bigger cage. Just because if you're going to have a title fight, it should be in a big cage. You can debate about it for the small,
regular-sized cage.
You should have it's just like the weight cut thing, right? If you can go 1 pound over for the for non-title fights, and fine, you can make a different size cage slightly for non-title fights. But for title fights, make it regulation.
Yeah, regular, like it shouldn't be big cage, small cage, and regular cage. The regular cage should be used for the main event, and also, I think the small cage favors Costa. Like in relative terms, I think that the small cage favors Costa more than the large cage favors Adesanya, but not as much as that small cage favors Costa.
Yeah, it doesn't favor Adesanya. It just removes that huge advantage that it would have given Costa, right?
Mm-hmm. More room to breathe is really what Adesanya wants in every fight.
Of course,
right.
We do have, so it did come out. Tyron Woodley did have a great interview this week with Ariel Helwani of ESPN, and where he talked about training with Masvidal. I'm actually thinking maybe we should leave that to next week, where we talk about the Woodley fight that is next week. We can talk about it just kind of next week, how we think that'll impact the fight. Let's see, there's something that really pressing you think you want to bring up right now?
I just, in a word, I think that as much as I think Masvidal is overrated, I think it's the best possible training partner for Woodley. Woodley needs someone who will tell him, get your shit together, bro. Focus on the fighting. And Masvidal is not the kind of guy, if Woodley performs in training how he's been performing in his fights, Masvidal is going to play a large role, I think, in dissuading him from going out there like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have to say about that. Otherwise...
We have, let's just move on to the next week's card. We have a couple fights.
Yeah, we got next week's card.
As we said, it did lose its big main event in Santos against Glover Teixeira. That is really disappointing. We do have a new main event, and it is actually going to be a full 5-rounder, by the way. I actually really like this fight. This is a great fight. I don't know if it's necessarily a main event, but it's a great, great fight. Michelle Waterson against Angela Hill. Angela Hill was for a time probably the most active fighter in the UFC. I think she fought like 6 or 7 times in a year. It was insane. Yeah. Finally lost the fight.
6 or 7, not 67, right?
6 or 7, not 67. That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Jeez. Oh my God.
Right.
She's
she won almost all of them. She is coming off, I believe, 1 loss.
Yeah, to Claudia Gadelha.
But before that, she was on an absolute tear. She was on like a 5-fight winning streak or something like that. That was her first real loss. And by the way, I actually thought she might have won that fight. I remember it being a very, very close fight. Controversial decision. So it'd be really, really exciting if she can get a win over Michelle Waterson. I think she'd be 1, maybe 2 fights away from a title shot. I really like Angela Hill. She got her what's it called, commentating debut. They're really trying to push her as a personality as well. She commentated for the UFC as well just a couple months back.
Yeah, she's great. She's super super interesting. And she went on Rogan, and like
Yep.
she's a great conversationalist and like just a
Definitely.
great addition to the UFC.
And then Michelle Waterson, the karate hottie, she has a decent following. She was moving on up. She had a chance. She was really, I would say, one fight away from the title shot, but she lost, unfortunately, to Joanna. Joanna just outclassed her head to toe. I don't think you're going to see Michelle Waterson ever win a title fight. She's not at that Joanna level. She's not at the Zhang Wei level. She's not going to beat Jessica Andrade, who, by the way, moved up to 125. And she's not going to beat Rose Namajunas. But she is a good fighter. I think that Angela Hill fight is just a great matchup. It'll be really exciting. I don't know who I'm going to call. I think I'm going to lean on Angela Hill on that one. I think she has a higher upside. I just don't know where she is right now.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm going to take Angela Hill as well for that. I'm going to guess by a 5-round decision.
We also have Roxanne Modafferi taking on Andrea KGB Lee. Roxy Modafferi is a girl who has always kind of flown under the radar, but lately has been pulling off a lot of big upsets, a lot of big wins. Andrea Lee is actually coming off 2 losses. Both of them split decisions, one to JoJo Calderwood and one to Lauren Murphy, both of whom are very good fighters, but they were both losses, of course. She's now 3-2 in the UFC. She had 3 big wins and then those 2 real close losses. So it'll be an interesting fight, I think. Roxy Modafferi, I would still lean towards. She has that jiu-jitsu experience. She has that veteran experience. I think she is going to win most of these close fights. And I don't think Andrea Lee is that next step ahead yet. Anything else to add on those 2?
No, I don't. I'm familiar with Roxanne, but I'm not familiar with Andrea, so I don't have too much to add.
All right. Well, the last fight I would want to talk about would be Brock Weaver against Frank Camacho. I love Brock Weaver. Brock Weaver came off the Contender Series. He's repping his native. He lives on an Indian reservation in the States, and he reps his tribe in all of his fights. He wants to get federal what's it called? Recognition, I believe is what they call it, for his tribe. And he's really fun on the microphone. He's a good fighter. Unfortunately, his last fight, while it was a win, it was a knockout loss win. He got knocked out. He was downed, and he got kneed in the head and knocked out. And the other guy was disqualified. Yep. He got the win.
Okay.
But it's still a knockout. And when you talk about a guy's career, doesn't matter what the circumstances were, a knockout is a knockout, and that affected him.
Yep. It's going to hurt. And
Frank Camacho has got some big power. I don't know who I would call to win. I want Brock Weaver to win. I'm a real big fan of his, but I think it'll be a good test to see, did he recover from that unfortunate incident in his last fight.
Yeah, interested in seeing him fight again. He's always an entertaining guy.
Well, this week was a bit of a slower episode. We didn't have too big of a fight card this weekend. We don't have too big of a fight card next weekend. However, next week that will not be the case. While we do have a fight card to talk about next weekend, we have an even bigger fight card to talk about for the following weekend. So next week we will be talking about the Woodley versus Colby card. Fantastic card. There's a bunch of other really, really exciting fights on that card. And after that, we just around the corner, we will have the Adesanya card coming up. So we have a couple. While we do have one more slow week, we have 2 crazy weeks. When we're off to Fight Island, we're going to have 4 or 5 great cards there. Guys, don't fall asleep, basically. We have the next week. Take it slow, but get revved up because we have a crazy next month and a half, 2 months coming up in the UFC, and the SmeshCast will be with you throughout all of that. So we will be back with you next Sunday, back at our normal time, a bit earlier in the day. Until then, have a good week.
Yeah, right. Thanks for watching, folks.
Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe as always.